I want to thank first Mike Marshall for inviting me here and all the other people who have been engaged in that. Also Marie Rubio, who started that 4 years ago. We found out in Strasbourg. And thank you to all the speakers who have done all those interesting presentations before me. And I want to thank all you that you have such a big audience here. And I would like to open our view to the world, to other countries worldwide, because this is not an issue especially in Germany or France, but in many, many countries over the world. So what I want to do is give a little view abroad and have a little view on the statistics, look into the statistics. I have to say something about why more men, although very much is said already today about this issue. And then I will report about campaigns for getting more men into the field and to get a better gender balance. So just to show this map, there are some countries who have done national campaigns or projects towards a better gender balance, among them Norway, Denmark, and Germany, and just started Iceland. But there are some more countries who have done at least regional projects or initiatives, and we have many more countries who have done research. So we are starting to get a really good look into the subject. So it's not just here and there, but we have many interesting things, and so we can see and understand what are the same issues in many places and what are different issues. But I have to say one thing in advance. Because the systems of early education and care are so different in many countries, so many things I will say will be about the child from 0 to 6 years, not about 0 to 3, because in Germany and Norway and so, the system of early childhood education and care is one system, and the change to school comes later than in France. So it's really difficult to compare developments in other countries because the systems are so different. And in France, as you all have the crash the first 3 years, it's a bit more difficult than it has been in Germany because they are always talking about older children, so 5 years old. And then it's easier to talk about the role of men than when you come to the very, very small children. I would like to have a very short look back, a bit different from the other looks we had before. Because when did it start that we had more men in early childhood? And there was an interesting thing in the 70s, because in Sweden, they discussed the issue of men in early childhood. In the 70s, when they introduced jämställdhet, that means gender equality, and then they had affirmative actions for more men, starting 1971. And the number of men in preschool education was 9 times higher only 4 years later. So they had quite good results. But then the unions said, well, this is not okay because it was against the women's rights. So, and then they stopped all the things and nothing happened for 3 decades. And only the last 2-3 years, they started to put it on the agenda again. So we have some experiences already 30 years old. That's interesting. It took a bit longer that in Europe the case was taken up. It was in the 90s when we had first European networks, Jan being in one of them, and had first results published in 93. And 1996, so 20 years ago, we had this target of having 20% males in the ECC workforce within 10 years, which is now 10 years ago. And nowhere this aim was reached, this goal was reached. But still, the issue stayed on the agenda, and we have much more support now on a political level than we had 30 years ago. It's the OECD report Starting Strong who stated 2001 we need strategies to recruit a gender-mixed, diverse workforce, although 5 years later they found nothing had happened in most countries. And then again, 5 years later, the European Commission had a communication, and the communication with the European Commission is quite far up in the system. So they stated there is a pressing need to make a career in the EC sector more attractive to men in all EU countries. So that's now 6 years ago. So things develop, but they develop slowly. What we have now is that we have some major research studies in some countries, national reports in some countries, a lot of research on different aspects of gender balance, on the situation of male workers in many countries worldwide. We have some national strategies, regional strategies and programs for more men, but still a low proportion of male workers, below 10%. So we could say, as Jana said, huge expectations, disappointing results. But we will see it's not true. But we have to take a closer look. And I'll start with the statistics. And I'll just show you this. Jan has mentioned Norway and Flanders. So you see some countries who have engaged in getting more men into the field. And you see, well, there are some countries who are above 4%. You see Flanders and below, that's, this is this race Janus talked about. You see Norway on top, which has started with around 5% 15, 16 years ago, and now they are around 9%. Sometimes they say 10%. It depends how you count them. If you count all the janitors, then it's 11 or 12%, but if you really look at the people working with children, the educational personnel, it's less. But you have to keep in mind this is children from 0 to 6. It's not 0 to 3. And now you have the red line. This is Germany, and we have some projects for now 7 years, and you see that it's going up. So we are now about reaching 5%, 6% maybe this year. And there is a very strange line in the middle. It's the line of Turkey. And Turkey is not very famous for gender equality, maybe. And they haven't done anything to get more preschool teachers, maybe preschool teachers, but still, they have a lot of preschool teachers. It's going like zigzag all the time, but it's, even at the moment we have more in Germany, but also it was more than in Germany, nearly as much as in Norway. And our colleague from Turkey says, well, they are paid very good at the moment, because Turkey really wants to improve early education. So they put a lot of resources into the field. Something is happening, there is change, and with the change, the men come. So, but if you even take a closer look, we see we can't talk only about countries. We have to talk about regions. So I come from a federal state in the east of Germany. It's called Saxony. And you see the green line, and you see that 10 years ago, we had very, very few men in the field in Saxony, as in France. But now we have more than 7%. So because the system is in a big change in East Germany, because we have many people get older, so they leave the field, and we have to get in many new workers. So, and they try to get more men in, and it works. And there are some more reasons. But we have other parts in Germany, Bavaria, for example, a very conservative part of Germany, where you see, well, it is rising, the number are rising, but much slower. And we have many regions in Bavaria, in the rural regions, where we have no men at all, still today, no changes. And we have other towns, for example, in Germany. Hamburg has more than 10%, and Hanover has more than 10%, and Frankfurt. So we can't talk about a country. We have to talk about regions and also about providers. So when you look at some providers who are engaged in getting a better gender-balanced workforce, they are able to reach the goal of 20%. They have done it in Norway. It's called Canvas. It's in the parent initiatives, where we have more fathers involved, as we heard before. They have 20%. So it is possible, but really depends on you have to get close. You can't say it's the nation, it's Germany or France. It's the providers, it's the region. Then it's important, and that means that regional factors and provider strategies are probably at least as important as effects of national systems and strategies. So this is important. If you really want to do it, look at your place. And just it's important to have national strategies. It's one part of the puzzle, but another part is what happens at your place. So this should be enough with statistics now. We continue with the question, why more men? And I've been debating this question for 20 years now, and you could say this all has been said 30 years ago. It's nothing new. But still, we have to debate that, because when you come to people who have never thought about that before, the same arguments come up again and again. And one important thing is that the debates are based on assumptions on physical differences between men and women who are today put into question. So one is, well, men are stronger than women. So and that is, of course, in a way true, but not for very small children. But it's still in the mind of people. So if male workers come to a center, they are asked to do things where you need physical strength. But on the other hand, we have debates on how important physical strength is in society. So this is an image of an Austrian women's journal, and they are asking who's the strong sex, the stronger sex. Maybe it's women. We don't know if Tarzan would like this picture, but well, that's one thing. And we have another very physical thing. This is this. It's about the penis and about the possibility to pee while standing. And that is, of course, the thing which is important when children get 3 or 4 years old. And it's interesting for children to think about that. And even if you don't go back to Freud, it's an issue for children. And it's also an issue for parents and for centers because mostly they don't like boys peeing while standing. So we have those signs and debates on that. And if you want to invite your parents or really have a strong debate and clashing it, just bring this issue up and they will have really strong feelings about that. So men are able to take a seat. So I think those physical things are not enough to give a reason for having men in early childhood. So we need some more arguments. But the problem is that the arguments are very contradictory. So should men do the male things or shall they do the female things or everything? And I would like to give you two examples of those contradictions. The one is from Norway, and I think it's quite comparable to what the minister said this morning. It's about gender equality. I will just read the first half because of time, so it's the most important part. What they say in one of the many Norwegian action plans for gender equality they have had in the last 15 years, they say this. They have engaged in getting more men into the field, and here's the reason. Traditional gender roles are to be replaced by new patterns where men and women do the same, and where women and men are not complementary categories. Gender categories are not to determine what men and women can, would, and should do. And this is what we have heard today several times. You might agree with that. And now they say that a higher proportion of men increases the probability of a positive assessment of efforts put into gender equality. And there are some examples for that. So they assume that if you have more men, you have more gender equality in this understanding of gender equality. Well, maybe you would agree. I think the minister would agree. And now we have another example. This is from far away. It's from Malaysia. This is president of a childcare association who's very fond of more men, and this is his argument. Men are more stable emotionally, not as sensitive as women. We have heard that today as well. If any problem occurs, especially grievances or any matters concerning the center or the children, they will try to solve them rationally. Men are always very strong to do all the necessary mobilizing corners, arranging furniture and fittings, carrying heavy stuff and other odd jobs that sometimes women can't do. Technical matters concerning water, electricity, any bulb which are not functioning and other repairing elements. Men are smart and handy, thus minimizing the operation cost of the center. Just imagine to call a plumber for a few minutes will cost you about 300 Malaysian ringgit, that's the money, which is considered exorbitant. And now finally it comes to the educational activities. Men can perform interesting outdoor activities such as football, gardening, or any kind of sports. So I would like to discuss with you if you think this is the thing you want men to do. We come back to that later. And you could say, well, this is in Malaysia, they haven't discussed gender enough. But I would assume that we have the same debates in all our countries, especially when we don't talk to researchers and educationists, but if we talk to parents, and if we talk to assistants, and if we talk to children. Okay, but come back to this the issue of this meeting. You're working in the creche, and I just had to show you this image. It's a creche. It's a Flemish painter who has painted this some centuries ago, and I would just imagine. I just want you to look at this image and just imagine. Would you dare to give the responsibility for this child to the man around in the picture? And the other question is, would this lady in the middle, would they want the man to take over? Because my impression is, no, she wouldn't like them. And even the men, they wouldn't dare. They would be a bit, I think they look a bit anxious. They are fascinated, but just imagine Maria would say, well, take it. I have to go away, I have to read something. I have to read from a thesis. I have to read some educational expertise. So, what shall I do? But that's the word creche comes from this image. That is the basic thing. And you would say, well, that's how it is. But I found another image, and it is from northern France. Here it is. It is the Virgin Mary reading the Bible while Joseph is comforting, or there is an F missing, comforting the child. So it is possible. It was even possible 400 years ago or 500 years ago. But I think we still have to work on that. We need more images like this to get a new image of what creche could mean. It's not only the Virgin Mary who's in care of the child, has to care for the child. Okay, this is just a little thing I had to show it to you because the image was from France. But what we have now is the discussion, do we have too many women in children's lives? And this seems to be a popular argument without any reasoning behind that. So it's raising and educating children is dominated by women, and this seems to be a problem today, without any arguments for that. So it said children, especially boys, need men. So this is so clear for some people that it's not even put into question. And I think we have to put that into question. I just do it by showing another image. So do boys need any man, any kind of man? Any man can be a role model. Maybe take this one. No, of course not. So we have to think about what is the important thing, having men. Because sex alone, as a counselor put it, is not an indicator of quality. And now we come back to the football issue. Because some month ago in November I was in Denmark, and Denmark is very well known for its gender equality concepts, and so they are very gender equal. They even don't need to debate it, they think. And they had a campaign for more men in early child education. And now I want to show you the poster and the flyer they invited to these conferences. It was this. So that was the main image on the flyer. So it's a man playing football with boys. So, and they didn't intend to have men stereotyped. It just happened because somebody took out this image for the flyer in Denmark, which is so gender equal. I found it very interesting. And in the debates in Denmark, we found, well, behind that, there is still a lot of stereotypic assumptions about what men and women should and could do. But what does it mean if we make this image? Should men play football in kindergarten? And if yes, with whom? Only with the boys or with boys and girls? And what kind of gender image are evoked by showing images of doing this, men playing football with boys, and what could be an alternative? And I think this has to be debated because otherwise it just happens without thinking about that. So if we want to have something different, we need gender-conscious pedagogy, gender-conscious education. People have to think about that and have to debate that in their teams. This doesn't happen just because a man is there. Okay, the question behind that is, are men really different? And we have some research now on that, and I will show say something about this research, some examples. And the first is from China. And we have some research on men. You see, China is far away, but they have the same issues we have. And here is one example, and the result of the researcher was the most remarkable differences are in their teaching styles. With male teachers, though they talk about teaching, you see, it's not about carers, because that's another system again. With male teachers adopting a more flexible and open style, while female teachers employing a more reserved and disciplined one. Interesting. And now the citation of one male worker from China in Tianjin. He says, "Men are born to play, hence my dream is to be a child king and play with children. Through playing, I can improve my relationships with children and make them grow up happily." So this is his impression of being a child care worker. You could say, well, this guy is really good. He's read Vygotsky and he knows how important play is for children's development. Or you could say, well, he doesn't understand anything. He is going to play with the children, and afterwards the women come and have to clean up because he's just playing. And we have the same debates in Germany and Austria that men love to play with children. It's very nice. It's good. They are really in a relationship. But it's not only one child. You have to take care for the whole group. You have to organize things, and that can become a problem. So we have to debate that. We have one field where we have clear results about differences between men and women. That's in taking risks. Here you see a man and woman taking care of a child who's getting up somewhere. And it might be that men are different in that than women. We have some interesting research from Norway and saying, yes, risky play is important for children, very early already, and they go out in the forest and do risky things even with 2-3-year-old children in Norway. Even in rain in December, they are out now, and they are changing nappies in the snow. They really do it. It's impressive. And they say men are more willing to take risks and are more relaxed with children's risky behavior. But interestingly, in those kindergartens where they go out quite a lot, there are different women. The women are different from the women who work in kindergartens where they don't go out so much. So it's a different kind of men and women who we can attract when we have more risky play in early childhood. But what they can clearly say is there is a gender issue, and risky play is an important issue, which is not very much debated in these debates on education and care in the first 5 years of life of children. We have some more research, and I just summarize something, because what we find out if we get close to pedagogic behavior, we see that the studies say that men and women do not differ very much in dimensions of professional and pedagogic behavior. We have some very good studies in Germany now. It's called a tandem study. But there is an implicit gendered subtext permanently accompanying pedagogic behavior in daily routines. So it's not the professional behavior what makes men and women different, but it's something what happens aside. And it could be that male and female preschool teachers interpret children's needs, interests, and development levels differently from each other. So it's not that the men and women are so different, but they have a different look on boys and girls. And interestingly, it's not the difference between men and women, but the interactions between the gender of the child and the gender of adult, which is most relevant. So it's in a way that boys and girls differently approach men and women, and they react upon that. So there is the interesting thing we have to think about. So that means male workers can be of specific relevance for maybe some boys. And what we see in situations with the manifest gender connotations, the EC workers seem to act in a specifically authentic manner. So we have to have a more closer look to that. We have some interesting things to think about. Okay, but that's enough for this issue. We have to look at the campaigns. Oh no, sorry, one last sentence. We could turn it other way around. You could say men are crucial for gender-sensitive education, for gender education, because gender is less relevant only then when we have both men and women in the field. And then gender can become less important, not more important. But we have to come to the campaigns, and I'll just show you a few examples. We start with Norway, and they have, this is Men I Barnehagen, so men in kindergarten, and this is one of the most famous activists. They have had long-term measures for more men for now, I think, 20 years now. And it's a consensus that men are important in the lives of children and also in the kindergarten. And they have action plans, national action plans four national action plans for gender equality. But still, it's below 10%. Though they say you have to keep the pace. You have to have another program, and then you can get a difference. But you have to stay making programs, discussing the thing. It doesn't just happen from alone. I come to Germany, and we have now 1 decade of programs for more men. You see some images, and when I saw that, it's interesting. They all have a beard on the posters. We started 12 years ago with the first regional studies. Had the first model project with thinking about new vocational orientations for boys. It's called New Ways for Boys. This is the logo. We had the first nationwide conference on the issue 10 years ago. The Ministry of Family Affairs initiated a nationwide study 2008, which was published 2010, and then it really took off because we had a national program, More Men in Kitas, which is all the institutions for creche and kindergarten and also after-school care. And they, skip that, sorry. And they founded a national coordination office and funded it. They had a European Social Fund model program, More Men in Kitas, for 3 years. They had a research study, I already mentioned that. And now they started to promoting job shifting to the field and made a new model program. And there was a lot of discourse coming from those projects. The coordination office, to mention, still exists, so it goes on to work. It gives information, it gives strategic counseling, it gives workshops and conferences, it does a lot of networking and public relations, so there is always somebody you can talk to and who spreads information. And those people there in Berlin are working, and they have the very good website, so that's very important to develop projects at regional places. And this is still funded by the ministry. Yet the European Social Fund model program, you see a big bus, this is an American school bus who's going around the projects, inviting adolescents to inform themselves about the profession of working in early childhood. They had 16 models in 13 federal states and got 13 million euro financial support to develop innovative strategies and best practice with a wide spectrum of measures and issues. Including vocational orientation, vocational training, and job shifters, on-the-job training on gender issues, team coaching and mentoring, working group for men working in the field, concepts regarding this fear of pedophilia, we call it the general distrust against male workers, prevention of abuse and violence, and a lot of public relation, campaigns, media. In Hamburg, for example, they had all the trams were posted with campaigns. So you see, you have a lot of different measures, not only one or two. So that made the difference. But if you have a closer look at those campaigns, you see some difference between the campaigns, how they argue. For example, this a model project in Stuttgart, they said, starke Typen for starke Kinder. That means you need tough guys for strong children. So they used images, traditional images of masculinity to develop the issue. They said, we have to do that, otherwise the men won't come. But in Hamburg, which is a bigger town which has more men, they said, no, we need diversity. They say, sei alles wer Erzieher. Be everything. Be early childhood worker. So and they tried to find different images of what it can be to work, what it can mean to work with children. Not only this traditional thing, tough guy and going out and risky play, but also comfort children, read to them, make music, all the things what educators really do, with carers really do with children. So that is something what has to be discussed. How do we want to image man and masculinity? We also find out that in programs for vocational orientation, we have to think about the peers. It's not only about getting young boys interested in the field, it's also about what do the other boys think about that? The peers play a very important role because negative attitudes towards men in early childhood education are mostly often reported from male adolescents. It's the other guys say, what? You want to work with children? Are you gay or what? So if they are, it's the most relevant time for this skepticism is the time of vocational training and around the first vocational experiences. Whereas experienced workers report less problems. They accept it. They know what they do. But when they're young and want to get into the field, that's a very important time. So you have to work with those who could be interested, but also with those who say stupid things to the others. So with all guys, that's important. And the guys are more important than the girls, because the girls say, it's fine, I would like to have more men, if you ask the adolescents. So it's really important to work with all the guys. Good. We come back to China. We come to vocational training, and what they did is they had a program, and the headline in some newspapers was, it will soon rain men at kindergartens. Because they made a program, government-funded program, working against traditional stereotypes, 5 years of university training, and it was fully paid by the state, and they had more than 10,000 applicants for 300 places. And we have several programs now in China doing that, and also debates on, is it okay to get the men funded fully paid, but women don't get it. So it's a debate on gender equality now in China as well. But as soon as it works, so the men came. In Denmark, we had heard about Denmark, they have done a lot for these job shifters to attract them, and they have a main motto, a main message. It means you don't need to change your identity to change your profession. And they created a toolbox, and they had another group, the job counselors. They are very important. What do job counselors think when people come, I want to have a new job? Do they say early childhood could be a choice? Project leaders, institutions, so they made this toolbox so that on the field, those institutions have an idea of gender balance. And don't say, oh, you're a man, you don't go to that, you go to that. It's very important. Now we have this new program in Germany, and we have a huge ESF model program for job shifters. It's not only a program for men, it's a program for men and women, but it has in mind that gender is an issue. And interestingly, they have some details I can't explain now because it has to do with the German system. But interestingly, we have more than 50% male participants in the program because they have thought about gender issues. And now it's because other programs have 2% male participants, but this program has 50%. It's a very big program, so they're really doing something, and it's not only about men, it's about both genders. So, now very important is what happens when the men come to get the first practical experience. They might be motivated, they have an idea about it could be interesting to work with children, but now they come to center, and the people in the center haven't thought about that at all. You want to work here? Maybe we know you. You were there as a child. It's very nice that you come back to visit us, but do you really want to work here all your life? No, that can't be. Do something real. So it's important. If you bring people into practice, during the study? Yeah, okay. So, I have 5 minutes. I stop in 5 minutes. So, it's important that the centers who take the young guys, or the beginners, they have an idea of we want men and why do we want them. So we have to work with the centers who take the young men and who are starting to have gender-balanced teams. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is it is very important to bring men together, especially when they are isolated. So we have in many countries, we have experiences with groups of men meeting and exchanging things, working on many different issues. This is a map of all those working groups for male workers in ECs in Germany. It's now quite a lot many of them were started in the model projects, but now they still exist, many of them, and they debate a lot of things, but I will just mention 2 things which are very important for them. It's being a man in a female team is a very important issue, and it's this fear of pedophilia. And what one colleague said, these issues are very important for the man, and there is no other place, no other context where they can be discussed. So they need this kind of meeting point where men can meet and talk about that. So we did a lot to develop that. Okay, to conclude, a little summary. What do we have to do? It's 3 things. We have to gain men, we have to get them, we have to train men, and then we have to retain men and support teams that they stay in the field. And all this means that we have to change attitudes, not only of the men, of the teams, but also in wider society. And now I'll just say what Jan has already said again. I will say again what Jan has said. We need specific actions in very different fields, in several areas, in different stages of vocational biographies are necessary. And we should have projects for at least 10 years, as Norway showed. Maybe we should say 20 years. And the conclusion is, this is not just about men. It's about gender balance in the workforce. And it's not just about getting men into early childhood education or care. It's about creating open spaces where early years workers can position and develop themselves as men and as women, and where they can develop a new gender-conscious understanding of care that goes beyond traditional gendered notions. So we have to ask, what kind of culture do we need to attract men and women to join in professional work with children in our institutions? Thank you for your attention.